If you had the strongest chess engine in the world for one day, what would you do? Well, this was my life for the past 2 months. I partnered with Chessify, who gave me exclusive access to the most powerful chess engine on Earth. They call this their 2 billion nodes per second engine, as it computes up to 2 billion positions every second it computes. Think of various chess engines as cars. Their speed is what we would call their power. A human can compute 2, 3 chess positions per second. Your top analysis chess.com and Lichess neural network engines compute up to 20 million positions per second. This is where it gets next level. Advanced neural network engines that you pay for go from 20 million to 700 million nodes per second. A node is basically a position. And then, the highest commercially available engine that you can get drives up to 1 billion nodes per second. 1 billion positions every second computed by Stockfish 17. This is so powerful you can't even compute it on your local computer. Chessify needs to transfer your analysis overseas to one of 4 servers that they use: Microsoft, Oracle, Google, or Amazon servers. But Chessify gave me their 2 billion positions per second engine that they only give to world champions and top players before very important tournaments. You are watching the very first YouTube video that features this engine publicly. With all this power in my hands, I decided to reveal the truth about openings and share it with the world. Italian! But before I started, I couldn't do this alone. So I partnered up with my good friend and talented chess YouTuber Garudapura, who will be our opening chess specialist. And the best part of this is Garudapura made you a free PGN file from our findings down below in the description for completely free. In this video, you will find out the best first moves in chess, the best first moves against 1e4, the best first moves against 1d4, the best Sicilians for black, the best replies to the Lopez and the Italian game, the best replies to the Catalan, the Nimzo Indian, the Reti, and the King's Indian attack. We will answer the question, does the King's Indian still work? Death to the Alekhine and Scandinavian defenses, how to destroy the Pirc and modern defenses, and the potential resurgence of the Blumenfeld and Benko Gambits. In every single position we computed, we used Stockfish 17.1, which is the latest and strongest commercially available engine in the world. And we computed every position to depth 50. So 50 half moves, 25 moves deep, at a speed of up to 2 billion nodes per second, so up to 2 billion positions computed every single second. What you see as the nodes is how many positions the computer has computed so far in the millions of positions. So right here, it has computed nearly 3.9 trillion positions. We ran over 32 trillion positions in this video over 20-some plus hours. First things first, we need to know the 15 best first moves in chess. Right now it's on 10K, so just for everyone watching, 10,000,000. So it's on 10 million. And we're about to do 2 billion. E4, E5 is now taking the lead on depth 38. So 38, for people who don't really know about engines too much, I used to not. 38 is 38 half moves, correct? So 19 full moves. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. It's recommending the a variation in the open Ruy Lopez, interestingly, if you look at the direction it's giving.
Rookie 1, yeah, knight d6.
Knight 6, e5.
It takes you.
Yeah, but that's
Bishop f1.
Yeah, that line is notoriously equal, right?
Yeah, it's a very dry line.
Yeah, it's a very dry line. Slow down with
the bird is equal. Oh my god.
No.
Ladies and gentlemen, the bird opening is an equal opening for all.
I refuse to believe it.
An emotional moment for the chess community. D4 now taking the lead. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. D4 and the Reti knight f3 are battling it out for the first position. Yo, E4 is fourth. This is a tragedy for E4 players. Didn't Magnus say that E4 is the best first move practically?
I would probably probably go for e4.
He said that against d4, there's too many tries for black.
Hmm. Apparently, the lines in d4 and knight f3 are both the same. They're both recommending to enter the same exact line
Oh, it
he was posing.
transposes.
So, yeah. So I guess the interesting finding here, at least, is the Rogozin
Rogozin.
is might be
Rogozin. Queen
might be the
a4 check
new.
Rogozin. It's the same moves. I'm gonna
Yeah.
try not to click. No, I clicked. I'm fucking stupid. Oh my god, I'm so fucking stupid. Ah, Italian.
Yeah.
Italian. Italian.
It's it's not recommended
Slow
to
Italian. Slow Italian a5. Slow Italian a5.
a5. Okay.
Step
Yeah.
50. Step 50. After the shocking result of one knight f3 being in front of d4 despite the popularity difference, crazy to me, and f4 ranking at the bottom, the bird's opening is a small edge for black.
So, the computer here seems to be liking the first move e4 by a small margin, and it enters or recommends the Italian game here, and for white to go for the slow Italian with d3 and c3, slowly building up the center with d4 in the future. But black chooses this very topical a5 line, just preventing white from ever playing b4, and also getting some more space on the queen side, but it does give up the b5 square. Now, we investigate this in greater detail in the chapter when we try to find what are black's best options against the Italian game. The second top choice is the move knight f3, where the computer seems to be recommending the setup with g3 and bishop g2, going for king's Indian attack. Black grabs a full center, and then white eventually plays c3 and tries to put a pawn on d4, where this line actually transposes into what we'd normally see in the Grunfeld defense. And these lines, in typical fashion, are quite equal and are very equal actually, and after this thematic move 94, black is managing to get equality. So black has no problems there theoretically, and this has been known for a long time. In the line with d4, it seems to be recommending white to go for knight c3, allowing the Nimzo Indian, but going for this Rubinstein variation, which has a very solid reputation for black, and so these positions are supposed to be completely fine for white and or also for black. So it's a very interesting decision here for both sides. The first move, which interestingly gives black an advantage, is the first move b3, which is known to actually like give black a very comfortable game after e5, where white just basically gets this position and black gets their nice share of space in the center with the pawn on e4, and later pushing pawn to d5. So yeah, this is quite nice. A couple of interesting things to look at is the first move a4, which is not particularly great because it doesn't control the center, and also this move f4, which is considered to be the worst move, where the computer recommends to go for this interesting d3 line and then going for knight d2, preparing e4. Black can get a very interesting game here, and yeah, it's a very double-edged game essentially. White has some other options instead of going for this, for example, just going for g3, but the computer seems to like this move knight d2 a bit more. So this is what we found basically.
Next, we're gonna move on to the best replies against the best first move 1e4.
As a lifetime e4 player, this is
Me
gonna
too.
be very exciting.
Okay, we're underway. My God, if Scandinavian finishes bottom, Luis, I owe you a cry.
Man, I'm expecting the Scandinavian Alekhine are gonna be battling it for the worst.
Really?
Yeah. Namely because the Alekhine has problems, like theoretical problems after the four pawns attack, right? So
Yeah, but we have a6 in the mix. You've got to be kidding me. A6 is better than these two openings? Alekhines has been replaced.
that would be my general, assumption. Alekhine has been replaced by one h6. Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, the fourth world champion's own opening, the Alekhine's defense, has died with us just now in this moment of the video. Okay, what do we have here?
Okay. 45 as the
number
first.
one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, what were you go.
Yeah, that's unsurprising that e45 is number one, yeah.
Yeah. Like you get some Italians for black, and it's the one that feels the most equalizing. However, 1c5, Sicilian, as they say, is the most going for a win.
Oh, but the interesting thing about the Sicilian recommendation is that it's suggesting white to enter Rossolimo and black to use the e6 and knight e7 line.
Whoa. Triple whoa.
Which I thought, according to current theory, is accepted to be equal, but slightly more pleasant for white.
We're at depth 43 already. I'm so happy. We're almost there.
Yeah. But the question I guess I have is that are these innovations that we're discovering now, is this something that all the super grandmasters have known for like the past 5 years or something? That's my question. So
That is a great question.
yeah.
So now with each depth adding on, I get more and more excited because we get closer and closer to the truth. So we can look closer and closer at. So, for example, the Rubinstein is recommended for the French right now. The Rubinstein is the third best defense for the black pieces at 1.49 billion nodes per second at depth 44 on Stockfish 17.1.
Yeah, I'm really hoping it changes.
It changes. For the sake of sanity, we hope it changes.
Yeah.
Oh, can we be unsurprised at how for the Caro-Kann the best approach for white against it says so far is the advanced variation.
Yep. And it seems to be recommending the short variation. Very
Yeah.
classical stuff.
4 knight f3.
Yep.
Okay, we have our first equalization at depth 45. We have e5 is equal for the black pieces by margin of 0.15. It is the best defense against e4. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's unsurprising, right? For anyone that's been following chess for even a bit. The line that it seems to be recommending is the Ruy Lopez and this line in the Berlin, just to play knight f6, capture on e4, and then even in this line, it seems to be recommending the Berlin endgame. So, yeah, interesting. Unsurprising, I guess, but it's just good to know that that is still what the computer agrees on. Yeah.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! The French. We have the advance.
Oh, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Alekhine's defense is not one of the top 10 replies for black against 1e4. It's
Yeah.
not. It's out. The
Yes.
Scandinavian is less good than 1h6, basically throwing a second move out to the white pieces is better than the Scandinavian defense.
Yeah.
Sorry, my Nordic countries. Oh my god, the Nimzovich has passed the French. Wait. Stop.
Wait. No way.
Ladies and gentlemen, holy schmoly, what are we witnessing? French defense falling off a cliff. I can't. Caro-Kann third? Caro-Kann third? No. The chess community will be in an uproar.
That's acceptable, no? Caro-Kann a third.
My GM friend, who's been a Caro-Kann player his entire life, said he's not riding the Caro-Kann boat anymore. Because they learned 17 moves of theory and you feel like you have to defend the whole time.
I think it's good to stop it now. Yeah.
Okay. No surprise 1e5 being the best move for equality, closely followed by 1c5, the Sicilian defense, which is the best move to play for a win for black. So I highly recommend that one. And the shock, the absolute surprise, is the French defense ranking 5th, no less, behind the Nimzovich defense, a long-lost opening for black, which we think, me and Luis, will have a resurgence in the next 5 years. And then a6 being better than the Scandinavian defense. Don't ask me why.
So against e4, the computer seems to be recommending the move e5, which is unsurprising as his thought choice. And it enters the Ruy Lopez, where black chooses the Berlin defense. Instead of going for the Berlin endgame following d4, white chooses rook e1, and then enters this notoriously drawish line. And the computer really doesn't stray away from this. It just enters a very symmetrical position where white has no chances to play for an advantage there. And besides that, the second choice of the computer is to play the move c5, the Sicilian defense, and to go for knight c6, and for white to go for the Rossolimo variation, where black chooses this e6 move. And in this position, this seems to be completely fine for black. Black is able to fight for control over the center, and is doing fine here. It's a very dry and drawish game. Besides that, the computer recommends the Caro-Kann as a third choice, and it just enters the classical short variation for white. Black chooses this knight e7, followed by knight g6 and f6 setup, which is very dynamic, but it accepts a weakness on e6. And personally, I'm not a big fan of this, but it does seem to be playable for black. Besides that, it also recommends the Nimzovich defense with knight c6 as the fourth choice. And this is slightly higher than the French defense, actually, which is quite interesting, where black, of course, gets the bishop out, but has the pawn on c7, which doesn't advance to c5. And with some interesting play here, white does get a nice piece advantage, and overall should be doing at least a bit better, because the knight on c6 is just strange, but black is able to solve their problems and get a fine position. So this is quite interesting, and another thing is maybe the move h6 here. The flank moves a6 and h6 are not considered to be great, of course, as they do nothing. But against both of them, the computer recommends a setup where black basically chooses the French defense with e6 and d5 against with both of them. And we get a very interesting game here, especially this a6 line where it chooses a very dynamic f5, reaching a very interesting and a double-edged game. So this is definitely worth investigating in a deeper level.
Next, we're going to find out the top 9 first moves against 1d4. Time to find the truth. So what do you see so far? What do you like? What do you dislike?
It seems like the top 2 longs are as expected, d5 and knight f6. The question is, of course, like you expected, are they going to transpose into each other? Which we're hoping that's not the case, because that will reveal very little. I'm seeing that it's very interesting how the difference in evaluation between knight f6 and d5, it's very equal. But the third most considered to be the best move is c6, which has a 0.36 evaluation. That's like double,
It's the Caro-Kann. It's the Caro-Kann, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Caro-Kann is the third. Oh my god, you can play c6 and get the Caro if white wants to play e4.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I might try that OTB, actually.
Mm.
You know what's crazy? The Dutch. The Dutch is there. The Dutch is the 5th best.
It recommends it recommends a Stonewall, actually.
Wow.
With the bishop on e7 and then eventually playing d5.
So Stonewall in. Old Benoni out. Headline news, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. And the fourth most common, or the suggested line is e6, which enters a French defense. And that's preferred over the Dutch. So I guess it kind of shows that the computer prefers the French defense over the Dutch, which is interesting.
0 zeros. We have 2 0-0s on the board. This is headline news. Knight f6, d5 equalize, and e6 is close to equalization. Ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching depth 50 as we get to 23 full moves deep.
Yeah. It seems to be recommending the Catalan for both, the first move, knight f6 and d5 as well. So that's interesting.
Okay, we are closing out soon with d5 and knight f6 equalizing, c6 being not far behind. But c6, would you play that when you're playing down? Because one c6 and then they play c4, and then it's like, oh no, this is a Slav.
Yeah, I think based on
a lower rated opponent is not great.
Yeah, based on the principle alone of allowing the exchange Slav and the nature of positions it allows, I wouldn't go for that move.
d5 and knight f6 being the absolute moves for equality is no shock there, but what took my interest is c6 being such a not actually that bad, and then the Dutch ranking 5th being actually playable on this high depth at 0.38. I'm quite shocked by that.
So against the first move d4, the computer seems to be recommending the move d5 or the move knight f6, both of which transposes to the same thing after black plays e6, black plays knight f6, knight c3, going for the classical queen's gambit, and black chooses the Burgosian defense with bishop e4. White chooses the move queen e4 check, which is quite a trendy line, provoking the knight to come to c6, preventing black from being able to play c5 directly. And so after this, white plays e3, castles, bishop d2, still following the main line, and normally the main line goes d takes e4, followed by bishop d6, and black plays e5 next with a completely equal game, and more or less symmetrical, like very, very equal pawn structure. But instead, the computer recommends rook e8, and to go for a very interesting way of developing with b6 and bishop e7, which is very, very playable and gives black a fine game. So this one is quite an interesting direction. Instead of that, after d4, against e6, the computer just suggests entering the Caro-Kann defense and transposing to the normal short variation. Instead of c6, the computer also suggests e6, but it doesn't like it as much because it suggests that white just gets into the French defense, and it does recommend the Rubinstein variation with d takes e4 followed by knight d7, but white has typically like a nice edge in these sort of lines. White is able to castle long and normally can generate like a nice initiative or at least get more space in the center. So this is quite playable, but also should be nice for white. Against the Dutch defense, it seems to be giving white a small edge here after black chooses the stonewall variation with the bishop on e7. And yeah, in the end of the line here, like white should get a small edge and perhaps can even win a pawn at the end of the day. Black has some weaknesses here, and yeah, black is able to hold, but it's very uncomfortable from a human perspective. And besides that, against d4, yeah, computer doesn't like the move h6. It probably just really like dislikes this, but it does just to go for this sort of fresh defense pawn structure.
My next question for this engine at this speed is which Sicilian is best after e4, c5, knight f3, and I'm curious to know what are the best Sicilians for black in order. Wow, now knight c6 is getting a small margin here at depth 39.
The question is also in the e6 Sicilian, are we expecting a Taimanov? Are we expecting a 4 knights? What do you think?
In the e6 Sicilian, I'm expecting a 4 knights. I'm putting my money on 4 knights.
Yep. I would actually agree with that. Yeah, because
I have some prior knowledge with deep engines that 4 knights is the best e6 opening. So I'm going to put my money on that for today. And we have reached depth 40, ladies and gentlemen, 20 full moves deep in all 7 lines. This is your ranking after 20 moves deep. Knight c6 pulling ahead.
For at the current moment, it is recommending to enter the Kalashnikov Sicilian, which is very interesting.
Wow, Kalashnikov as the best Sicilian would be headline news, ladies and gentlemen.
And it's still suggesting
2a6 just bumped up. Oh my god, sorry for interrupting. 2a6 just bumped up to second place. a6 sitting there, apple picking at the 3rd slot.
Yeah. That would be shocking if a6 is considered better than e6. No.
That would take the O'Kelly Sicilian as from a memory check opening to a valid mainstream try.
Yeah.
We would be changing the chess world by at least 1% with this revelation. Okay, so it goes for a Najdorf. Number one is Najdorf.
Oh, but it's entering this old line that Kasparov used to play with this move. White plays bishop e3 and then black goes knight g4. This line is not played at all nowadays, I believe.
Wow.
Like, after bishop e3, I mean, most people still go for e4, e5, right?
Yeah, instead of knight g4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Also, just pulling a lens out because we haven't been discussing about the last moves. Naroditsky's famed Nimzovich try 2 knight f6 is entirely playable, ladies and gentlemen.
0.4.
0.4. 0.4 is playable, is playableness. Everything's playable for 7 moves. H6 is kind of not playable. Like, don't try this at home, kids. But like, depth 50. Should we close?
Let's see all the evals. Yep, they're all in order. Okay.
So who was gonna tell me that the O'Kelly Sicilian, long lost and very much dead, is better than the 2e6 Taimanov Khan and 4 knight Sicilian? Like, what is going on right now? I was also happily surprised to see the Nimzovich Sicilian 2 knight f6 be actually playable, and I think there'll be a resurgence of that move for the next 5 years to come. Next, we'll look at the top 8 moves for black against the Lopez, the most common and popular opening in all of chess. I cannot wait.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting because, of course, the Lopez is like the most common opening in all of chess. So, yeah, this is going to be very, very eye-opening, I guess, in terms of...
There was a point where I would get the Lopez around 25 to 30% of the time with black. Not even e4, d4, like 25, 30%. In Europe, they always play the Lopez. And that's the big thing about Europe. They play the Lopez.
The first move that is recommending is the move bishop e7, which we expected before to reach a transposition into the classical main lines. But yeah, the fact that it's the first
Why bishop e7
is kind of surprising. It's very interesting that the third line that the engine suggests is b5, bishop b3, and the bishop e7, which is very, very rare. It's I have to say that normally if people go for this early b5 line, they normally have the idea of going knight a5, and this is a very recent trend actually, right? where people have started to recommend this as black, because maybe they see that it's very unexplored, and players with white maybe aren't ready for it. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, it's interesting because this bishop e7 line, I don't know. According to the database as well, there are no um, high high profile games like among these super grandmasters here.
Wow, so it's totally fresh.
Yes, yes. Uh, 5 bishop e7, very, very rare line.
Deb 50.
Okay.
The second position we are running for the Lopez is on the fifth move for black after castles. There are quite the white options here. So we have one decoy as always. There's one line that we just want to see what the engine's like looking for. But we have the classical with bishop e7, which is the first indication right now. The open with knight takes e4. The neo archangle with bishop c5, and the deferred Steinitz with d6, which I've tried in classical, and the b5, which is mainline archangel variation.
I think that it's definitely going to recommend bishop e7 first, which is, the classical mainline, the most solid. And I think that it is going to recommend the open with knight e4 next. Because, yeah, I mean, it's well established, and I think this line is equal for black. But I think I'm very interested to see which direction it recommends for white, that it considers the most challenging. Wow, wait, I'm seeing something very interesting in the fourth recommendation with 5b5. It's recommending to go for some interesting variation of a marshal, like b5, bishop b3, bishop b7, rook e1,
Rook e1.
bishop e7, c3, and then black plays d5.
Wow, the martial variation. It's a transposition, correct?
It's a marshal, but black hasn't castled, and black has put the bishop on b7. Normally, black's main response in the marshal is to play c6, right? And the main line, first line that it's recommending, it is recommending the marshal. So that's unsurprising. Unsurprising to, I think,
Wow.
everyone.
Marshall is the main line of the Lopez on depth 48. With a trillion positions now run. Depth 49, I'm on my toes here.
Okay.
With almost 3 lines, like basically equalizing net.
It's interesting. The order is not what I expected it to be. Because the open,
tell me about that.
yeah, the open, the open with knight takes e4, I expected would be a bit higher, at least according to the preference of the engines. And yeah, it doesn't seem to be the case because b5, which is b5 followed by bishop b7, is a bit of a surprise to me, I have to say. Interesting. Okay, so the line that is recommending with the move 5g6, the deferred sinus, right? It's actually suggesting black to go for the Zaitsev variation with bishop b7 and then rook e8.
We were happy to see that black has a variety of tools that nearly equalize or give white a small edge, which is completely natural from the main Lopez position. So that's very, very good news.
In the Lopez, black has many options here, and the computer seems to be liking the move knight f6, going for the main line, bishop e7, and for white to go for this d3 move. Typically, white can play rook e1, and this enters a lot of theory in the closed Lopez. After here h3, black can play bishop e7, rook e8, knight a5, or even knight b8, going for either Breyer, Jagoran, or Zaitsev, or other systems. But here the move d3 just avoids all of that and gets into this position where black plays d6. D6 is also a very nice finesse here. The point is that if black castles here, then white can play a4, and black either has to play bishop e7 before rook b8. Meanwhile, if black starts with d6, a4 can be met with the move bishop d7, where the bishop is still on this diagonal to cover the f5 square. And instead, after d6, white chooses a3. This is the computer's line, and after this position, black should have no problems in this sort of game. And black has managed to equalize, of course. Against other lines, for example, bishop e7, aiming to transpose it to the normal lines, white has the additional option to play c4. And black has to be very precise here to prove equality, but I think that black is doing completely fine here after knight f6 and bishop c5, getting a fine game. Besides that, there are other moves, for example, the deferred Steinitz variation with d6, castles knight f6, rook e1, and b5, and followed by bishop e7, transposes just to the normal main lines. But black can also play the move bishop d7, going for the typical idea in the deferred Steinitz, which is to go g6 and bishop g7, castling the king on that side of the board. Another way to play is also the move bishop c5, which Nakamura started playing when he became more active in classical chess and managed to reach his highest rating again of 2800, or matching it at least. Then white plays c3, castles, and then d4 here, black plays knight g6, and this reaches some very interesting positions where black is completely fine here, but does need to be a bit more precise. It does lead to a very double-edged game though. Besides that, the Cosio defense with knight g7 here is also possible. Black brings the knight to g6, but white plays d4, and typically has a nice initiative in these sort of lines after bishop e3, exchanging the bishops off with a nice, with some nice control in the center. So black is quite passive here, and that's not my favorite line for sure. And yeah, besides that, there's some other moves that don't really make sense. For example, the move g6 here, the delayed g6 is not really great after d4. And some other moves like rook b8 and h6 are not really constructive.
Next, we'll find out what are the ins and outs of the slow Italian for black. Question for me, big question mark for me, is whether the engine's going to prefer a5 for black or a6. There's like a big debate which one you should play as black, which system, a5 to prevent that b4 expansion, or a6 to prevent a4 and then b4 trapping the bishop, and then a6 has like this bishop a7 that's very topical.
Yeah, purely based on the trends in the past, in the past couple of years, I think that it's going to recommend a5, because many years ago, like a6 followed by bishop a7, like even the early bishop a7 was, it's like very solid, gets the bishop out of any danger of like d4 as well as d4. Yeah, but a5 gets a lot of space on the queen side, prevents any future ideas of b4 anyways, and fights for space on that side of the board, right? So yeah, it's quite interesting. One downside that black accepts once they play a5 is that they're weakening control of the b5 square. So oftentimes white can play a move like bishop b5, right? Okay, first line that's suggesting is d6. Yeah, preventing the immediate d4 anyways. H3 and then a5. Okay, so the engine seems to have the preference of the line with a5, right? As we see.
Yeah. At least for that first line. And then d5 at second place is very nice. I like this d5 line. Black gains a lot of activity, but it's very, I would say it's unbalanced. But from experience, the main concession about d5 is that the knight from f6 hops off the defense of the king side, and the king side will be a little bit naked because that knight will often transfer to b6. And so white can launch a kingside attack and punish, especially with that very nice bishop on c4 if it keeps on that diagonal. Plus with like a knight g5, the king can get exposed and the king has less defenders. So I would say that.
Oh, that's a really good point, actually. Yeah, but it's interesting that even bishop b6 is a recommendation, which I have to say I have not seen before, because it's a very committal move, right? To go for bishop b6 that early.
Yes, it is. So in the Giri course, bishop b6, d6 is a system where you don't move the a pawn, and the bishop stays there. It's not a popular line. I don't think he describes it as, but he does show it in depth, and he has many lines against it. It's one of the first lines he actually shows in the course, if my memory serves. 4 moves have equalized, and one of them is h6. Yep. It's very committal. And especially at this stage of the game, I think it just indicates to us how slow the play is from this position after both kings have castled. Black can afford to give an h6 move on the board.
I think the two most principled moves in this position are d6 and d5, right? A d6 prevents, at least solidifies the center, opens up the bishop diagonal as well, while d5 just strikes back in the center, fighting more dynamically. But still fighting for the center in that way, right? So I would expect these two moves to be the main approaches, at least theoretically they are. But, the computer does see a bit ahead and says that bishop b6, a5, and h6 even, all these kind of slow, slightly improving moves, you could say, are still are decent tries.
We were happy to find that there was no less than 6 completely equalizing moves on depth 51 after 2.3 trillion positions ran. Beautiful.
In the Italian game, after black plays knight f6 and we enter the main line with bishop c5, both sides castle, the question is in this position, what is the best system for black? And here there are many choices here. For example, there are often lines with a6 where the bishop can draw back to a7 really quickly, or even black plays a5 here. Of course, whenever black doesn't play the move d6, it does invite the move d4. So this is always a consideration to be had. And overall, black is doing fine, but it does enter a lot of complicated and forcing lines here. In the meantime, like white could also play moves like bishop g5 and get into other positions. But the main line here, and what the computer seems to be recommending, is a position where black plays d6 and eventually goes for bishop b6. They can also reach this move order with the move bishop b6 immediately, which steps away from any d4 advances here, because d4 can be met with just d6 and the e4 pawn is just simply weak. So essentially here, we get a very interesting position here where black plays a5. So this combination of bishop b6 and a5, white plays knight d2, white is able to use this b5 square on account of black playing the move a5, and eventually black brings the knight over to e7 and g6. We reach some very interesting play here where black is also able to break through with d5, and eventually black can even either take on d4 here, liquidating, or even play the move e4, which is covered via the early d6 move. So this leads to a very interesting pawn sacrifice where black is also doing completely fine. So some very interesting directions to take note of.
Next, we'll look at perhaps the most trendy opening for white, certainly in Europe, I realized, is the Catalan opening. We'll find solutions for the black pieces. Today is very fast, right? We're at depth 41 already after like only a minute, which is like breaking a record. And a lot of moves here equalize. What's the most surprising? Oh, I know what it is, but what's the most surprising fourth move to you so far?
I guess I think it has to be the move knight c6, right? I think that's quite surprising. And it seems to be very playable. But it's like very, very unprincipled, right? To play knight c6.
We have our first equalization very near. Bishop e7, nearing, inching towards equalization here on depth 42.
Yeah, I don't think the first suggestion is surprising. Bishop e7 has been, a very popular move for a very long time. It's the classical main line, just to play bishop e7, castle, and then take on c4. And then see what white does,
Do you know anything about this 4c5? It's a move that I haven't seen before. Seems very dramatic and interesting. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, c5 is interesting. The line is fine for black, but it invites a lot of early complications where I think it would be better for black just to avoid it, at least in practice.
Wait, we have breaking news here. Bishop e4 check and bishop e7. I think there's a mistake. Are better for black?
Yeah, I think it's gonna equalize again. Because there's no way that bishop b4 somehow gives black a tiny edge, right? Yeah, I think as a firm follower of the move bishop e7 followed by castles, I don't think that there's any chance that this gives black a small edge. Like none of the lines across, I think, professional practice has shown to give black an advantage. So I think the computer will eventually equalize, just hasn't seen, maybe as far to the end.
So we're at a point right now, depth 44, almost everything equalizes. Everything pretty much equalizes.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between a d takes c4 and a c6? What have you seen?
Interesting. Okay, the line d takes c4 followed by the quick c5 is known to give white a tiny edge. I mean, just a tiny edge, but it's completely playable. By going for this very concrete approach, you would need to know a lot of stuff, right? Whereas if you play bishop e7 and castles, of course you need to know a lot still, but the complications would be after you've castled and after your king is perfectly safe, right?
Although I will say your opponent is most likely to know bishop b4 check and bishop e7 very well, and if you take and play c5, you can by good chance surprise them and even fight for a win.
Okay, the evaluation is switching again to giving white a tiny edge in the first line. So yeah, I think it was just kind of a fluke.
The glory days are over. It was a fluke.
Yeah.
Against the Catalan, we were so pleasantly surprised to see that so many options equalized for black.
The Catalan is a very interesting opening that recently has been taking over as one of the big main lines in all of chess. And the question here is, what is the best system for black? And we found out that after c6 here, which is quite interesting, normally, white gets a nice advantage if black just simply plays normally, like plays knight d2, and white is able to advance with e4 next, and white just gets a nice advantage. But instead, the computer recommends playing d takes c4, after a4 here, preventing black from playing b5 just to defend the pawn. Black here plays c5. But the question is, if black wants to do this anyways, why don't they just take on c4, followed by c5 immediately? So this might be a better way to do this, but typically in this line, white also gets a nice advantage after the move knight e5. The computer recommends d takes c5 early on, but this is not really impressive for white. This endgame should be completely equal. So besides that, the top choice by the computer is actually just to play bishop e7 and enter the main lines after castling, and black takes on c4. And with the time that white has spent to regain the pawn back, black will hopefully try to solve the problem of their development. Here there are two main moves. Knight e5 is often met with knight c6, which is known to be completely equal, and this has been known according to theory for a very long time. The move knight d5 is a very interesting direction if players with black don't want to just simply get an equal game and just want to complicate the game. So this is quite worth investigating, but instead the main move that is suggested by the computer is queen c2, where after a6, the point is queen takes c4 is met with b5, followed by bishop e7. But now after a4, black plays bishop d7 and solve the problem with their bishop here. And eventually black plays bishop d6 to neutralize the bishop on f4. And an interesting choice here by the computer is to play bishop e5, which has not been tried in at the top level, but has been tried in correspondence chess. So this is an interesting direction to investigate. And besides that, there is another interesting choice here, which is to play the move knight c6 already after g3. The point is, c takes d5 here is not great because after e takes d5, yes, the knight on c6 is misplaced, but the bishop on g2 is actually just going to be blocked, especially after black plays this move c6. So black is actually doing really well here. Instead, the most challenging move is the bishop g2, and black here will take on c4. Here, queen a4 doesn't come with a check, which is the point of the move knight c6. But here, black can play bishop e4, forcing a piece to block on d2, and here, black can play the move knight d5. And the point is that black is a pawn up, and white needs to be really precise here to make sure that they're not just simply down a pawn. But overall, at the end of the day, white is able to win the pawn back and get a completely fine game, but it is just a matter of taste of which is, which direction white wants to choose here. So it's at least a very sharp play, but there are chances here for black to actually outplay white if white isn't fully prepared.
Next, we'll look at perhaps the best opening for black against 1d4, the Nimzo Indian defense, and we'll look at the many replies that white has after bishop b4.
I think the Nimzo Indian is well accepted to be unbreakable, basically, at this point, right? Similar with like the Queen's Gambit declined, Ruy Lopez, it's pretty much up there in terms of like the best openings.
It looks like more and more things are becoming playable, though everything says the engine is pretty much equal.
Oh, wow. The Kasparov variation with knight f3 is getting a bit more up there.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, in evaluation, because this is
Kasparov. Take a bow.
yeah, because this is not popular at all. Like, I mean, this is not topical these days. Wow, it's giving us such a high eval for e3 and knight f3.
Yes, but I mean, surely this like margin of almost 0.2 from e3 to a3 is probably why a3 fell out of fashion and e3 is now one of the most popular moves in this line, if not the.
The nature of a3 is that it normally gives white tries to get these like white accepts these horrible like double c pawns, but tries to get an e4, tries to get an f4, and black has found resources to like just neutralize white's initiative there and still maintain black's weaknesses with the double pawns. So I think that's the reason. It's like the direction of play is quite uncomfortable for white if black knows how to defend. Whoa, shocking. Look at the fourth line, queen c2, d5, a3, queen c3, bishop c3, queen c3, castles, e3, c5, dc5, knight e4, queen c2, and then a5. Preventing b4. Yeah, what a line.
Instead of knight takes c5 and then b4.
Yeah, I guess not knight takes c5 because it allows b4. Yeah, maybe.
We have a lot going on here. A lot of variations suddenly just skewed towards black. And most of the lines now are dubious, standing on the board. Isn't this insane?
Yeah. It's
like we just got a bear market suddenly on our thing.
Yeah, it's shifted everything from being slightly better for white to suddenly a lot of moves being slightly better for black, right? Okay, the first and second lines of knight f3 and e3 are both equalizing, and transposing it to the same line.
Oh, that's very interesting. So we have like a clear winner if we're done right now, which is interesting.
Yeah. Okay, bishop f4 and bishop g5 being bad tries, that's expected. Let's see. G3 being that bad is unexpected, honestly. Exact same line for knight f3 and e3. This is gonna change things up. This is gonna change the
This is
the trend
it's pretty
of people
definitive.
playing.
It's pretty
Yeah.
it's stamping, it's putting a foot down. 3 trillion positions ran is insane.
Mm.
Insanity. As you can see, the engine really likes the Nimzo Indian. It just equalizes at best for white on 4 lines, and then other lines are just small edge for black. It's fantastic opening, highly recommend.
The Nimzo Indian defense is a very serious opening, and already, white has a lot of choices here. The computer seems to be recommending the move knight f3, followed by e3, or e3 first, both of which will transpose into each other, and where black plays d5, they can also play c5, but this is definitely the main line, and white to go for this move bishop d2, where white simply intends to play bishop d3, stake a knight on e5, while white will definitely castle, and support the knight on e5 with the move f4. This is a very typical setup after e takes d5, rook c1, rook e8, bishop d3, knight e5, and following it up with f4 leads to a very interesting attacking game, and this has not been seen that many times, but at the top level has been played. After knight c6 here, the computer seems to be recommending the move knight takes d5. Though I do think that the move knight e2, which is more common, leads to a very interesting game here. Black can play c4, which hasn't been tried a lot, or the move knight e4. After knight g3, one famous game or notable game played between Abdusattorov versus Benko continued knight takes d2, which is a mistake which allowed the sacrifice, and then eventually white got a winning position after knight h5. But instead, after knight takes e5 and g6, this should lead to an equal game, but still very interesting and a lot of pieces on the board. Instead, the computer recommends the move knight takes d5, which you cannot play knight takes d5 because of bishop takes h7, following with the same idea, but here queen takes d5 is possible. After bishop c4, at first the computer recommends the move queen d8, followed by knight takes 7 and going for this repetition eventually. But there is an interesting idea that after bishop c4, black can sacrifice the queen on g2, going for the stunning queen sacrifice, and eventually reaching this imbalance where black has 2 pieces for the queen, but this position is considered to be completely equal. And actually, black wins more games than white in this position because black has a fantastic piece coordination. So this is definitely a line worth investigating.
Next, we'll look at a very recently popular opening, I would say in the last 10 years, the Reti opening with white. Wait, so it's d4 eyes closed against the Reti.
Yeah, the main line after black pushes the pawn to d4 is to play b4, trying to develop the bishops of b2. But theoretically, black should be doing completely fine after both the move c5. Even like playing a move like g5 is interesting and has been tried in the past, leads to very wild play. So interesting that the computer here suggests after d4, white plays e3.
But okay,
Honestly,
Reti is small edge for tiny edge for black. Tiny.
Yeah. I think that's pretty well accepted. But then white can equalize, but it's just like it gets to some really wild play. White will have to again, as quite typical, that when one side has the slight disadvantage, positionally, less space or less development or something like that, they have to find weird moves to kind of stay in the game, right? But if they find those weird moves, then they are able to equalize, right? I think that's the general like trend we've seen. Okay, it actually d6e4 just transposes into a Queen's Gambit accepted. So that's an interesting line. And it actually recommends the 7th move b3, which I quite like for white. I really like that position, that variation, b3.
From the Reti, we were shocked to realize the reverse Benoni for black was a small edge for the black pieces from move 2. Insanity.
Here, the Reti opening is also a very interesting choice, and the computer's top choice is just to play d4, grabbing more space, and here white has a couple of choices. White can play either b4, after which black has also a lot of choices here, either c5, playing the move f6, or even the interesting gambit with g5 is completely playable. But instead of that, white can also play e3, which is the top choice of the computer, and if black plays knight c6, which is completely known to equalize, these sort of positions are completely harmless and should give black complete equality. But instead, the computer recommends c5, which is a very ambitious approach. Just to go for the so-called reverse Benoni and getting this position and bringing the pawn to a5 is a very interesting novelty. The knight g7 is the most common move and the most common direction, but a5 is the recommended move in this position. And yeah, overall it gives black a small edge, but eventually white is able to equalize. So this is quite possible and worth playing. Instead of that, there are other options. For example, the move e6 here just reaches a transposition to the Catalan. And instead of that, the move c6 also possible, and here black just plays knight f6 and develops a bishop out to f5. These are quite typical positions of the Slav defense when white chooses a sideline, which allows the bishop to develop out. Instead, d takes c4 here actually just reaches a transposition into the queen's gambit accepted here, which is completely fine. And interestingly, white decides to play the move b3, or the computer decides to do that, and this is a very underrated line in my opinion. So this is quite possible. Instead, knight f6 is probably the only not great move after c takes d5. So yeah, this is quite interesting.
Next, we'll look at the King's Indian attack, which is a system opening for white that white can play out of thin air from the first move and slowly build up an attack. So we're going to look at setups to counter this. Okay, I think you want to look up at the analysis. Holy fuck.
c5, bishop g2, c5 is okay.
Look at the evals.
But all the evals are giving edge black.
It's what the fuck?
I think that lines 1 to 3 are valid for their eval, maybe. Line 4 can be ignored because it's just the mainline Catalan. And so it's kind of making me skeptical about line number 5, you know.
Well, if line number 4 is small edge and is just mainline Catalan, that's all flawed. It's all going to change soon, hopefully.
Yeah, I think so. c5 and g6. This is an interesting system, yeah? Like, that's not a typical way to play. Normally, black plays c5. They try to fight for the center with the knights, with like knight f6. Or they move knight c6, right? I guess black's argument with the move c5 followed by g6 is that if they go for the immediate move g6, then it's going to run into white playing d4, right? So that's why black plays c5.
So you're blocking this d4 first, and then you're getting your good fianchetto bishop on g7.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like a solid kingside castle.
Yeah, but the problem is that eventually white will play c3 and d4, and we kind of get like a typical like Grunfeld position, right? Those lines aren't as exciting, right? It's typically accepted that it's leads just to equality in many ways. Oh, interesting. In the 2 knight c6 line, it's recommending to play c3 to avoid the line with knight b4. That makes perfect sense, actually, right?
Prophylaxis, yeah. h6, prophylaxis returned.
And you're just claiming that the knight c6 is misplaced, which makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, you're playing against a knight that's on c6 that doesn't belong on c6 against d4 structures. Against the King's Indian attack, which is a pretty much automatic opening for white to play, black finds many setups that equalize on the spot, 6 of which are down below. So I'm very happy to share these with you for free. Sub to the channel. Why don't you? Like the video too. Have a ball!
The King's Indian attack here is a setup where white just plays knight f3 and g3 against everything, and here black has a lot of choices. The top choice of the computer is just to play c5, bishop d2, and then going for knight f6 followed by g6 here. The point of which is that if black plays knight c6, then white can play d4. And getting into this position, if black plays e5, this reverse Grunfeld structure is quite good for white after c4, so white has a good reputation here. Instead, black plays g6 here, and of course there are other options like e6, after which white can play c4, or white can play d4 as well. But here g6 is the main choice, and white plays c3 followed by d4, and this reaches a transposition to earlier, as I mentioned in the first part of this video, this reaches a transposition into the Grunfeld defense, which is often seen. And we enter this position, which after knight e5, black has this very typical idea of playing knight e4. The point of which is that after knight c3, black is able to take on c3 or even support their knight on e4 with the move bishop f5. Here, there's some interesting lines followed by g4, but the main move by far is the move bishop f4. And this should give black also equality for sure. And besides that, there are some other options. For example, c6 here, followed by developing the bishop to g4, or going bishop to g4 directly is a very interesting way to play, where the point is black wants to play e5 next, and white can allow this. Or white, for example, h3, take 6 and e5, this is quite possible. Or even the move by playing the move d4 in this position is quite possible. And both of these are covered in the study and gives black a fine game, but the position definitely remains closed here. So there are a lot of different interesting variations here that can be played against knight f3 and g3.
Next, we'll look at the most hotly contested opening of the 21st century, the King's Indian defense. At the very top level, it isn't played anymore, but 2600 and below is very, very vastly played. So the question remains, is the King's Indian still playable?
I think the most dangerous moves in this position are theoretically the move h3 and also knight f3, trying to enter the main lines, My hunch is that the computer will recommend the move h3 actually as its first option, the Makagonov system. a lot of interesting lines there. And I think it's like very much unexplored compared to the main lines with knight f3. Okay, it does say that the move h3 followed by bishop e3 is the second best line, which is getting more popular, I think. Still not mainstream, but definitely getting more traction. And I like the fact that the first line that it's recommending is actually just the main line with bishop e2, knight f3, and then seeing there. But interestingly, the seventh move h6. That's a very interesting line.
That's not mainstream.
That is not mainstream at all, but one of the ideas is to go for knight h7, right? And the first line that's recommending is to go for the h3 line, but for black to simply play c5 and sort of get like a Benoni type position. It's a very, very like standard Benoni position, actually.
Is c5 principled?
c5 is principled, but the main moves are e5. Like, I mean, e5 is like the most common move.
Wait, is this the critical test of the King's Indian or not yet?
I think this is like the test. This is the critical test. I'm expecting either the move knight a6 or the move e takes d4 here to be like the two main lines.
Okay. h6?
Yeah. That's
Is this a dark horse making its way in the race?
I really hope so, actually, because this move is very, very rare, right? I don't think I've seen any top games in this line.
Wow.
Yeah, the move h6 is, according to the database, the ninth most common move. But apparently there's a very high level game. There are a couple of high level games here. Aronian has played this against Carlsen in 2022.
How did
And
he score?
it was a draw, actually. So
Okay. We're kind of swimming in that 0.4 to 0.6 unplayable right now. At this point, are you still confident in the black pieces to bring it back? Or
I'm pretty
we're going to
confident
be swimming
that,
here?
yeah, I'm pretty confident that at least e takes d4 will come back. And I think it'll be evaluated as like top two choices.
At depth 44, we're seeing 0.32 for this h6 move. Is this headline news?
That's
It's insane.
pretty shocking, actually. H6 is the ninth most common move, and it seems to be the top choice of the engine.
How easily can I get this against the King's Indian? Like, how often do players play knight f3, bishop
Oh,
b2, and don't care?
it's so common, right? This is the main line,
So
and
common.
considered. I mean, this is so common, and like, to play white for just to go for the main line, knight f3, bishop b2, because theoretically it's accepted that here playing the move knight c6, which is the main line by far, according historically, is able to give black like a perfectly good game, right? So
Mm.
white players are definitely hoping for this.
Right.
And if you suddenly bust out the move h6, they will not know what to do. And with good preparation, this is very much this is very exciting stuff.
Wow. ED taking the stride. E takes d4 at 0.21. Insane.
Wow. Okay,
Did you ever
that's
think it would get that close?
no. No, it seems wow. Point 21 is fully like mainline repertoire playable, It's like you can put it in your mainline, you would have no issues with that.
H6 is taking a dive. It's still maintaining its own evaluation. It's just taking a dive.
Yeah, it's taking a respectable evaluation though. That's very good.
We found that the King's Indian is indeed playable. It remained below the 0.4 territory, which is where we find that it's okay. So it's playable for black. And so we recommend this e takes d4 in the main line and then knight c6 afterwards. This is the best one for equality for the black pieces. We are very excited to see what prospects have in store for the King's Indian defense. I have 2 students who play the King's Indian. I'm very happy for them because it's now playable. Next, we'll look at a contested opening that you may see in Blitz, but that is not played at top level, and we seek to abolish this opening with the top engine today. Welcome to the Alekhine's defense, where black gives up 2 tempi to get their knight over on the queen side early on, and then attack the center from within. So approaching depth 44 here, what do you think about the suggestions and the evaluations? Are you surprised so far?
I don't think I'm surprised at the fact that the evaluation is so high for white. It does suggest the computer does suggest the 4-pawn stack, which is also I think unsurprising for both of us. But it's interesting to see like the evaluation being like 0.6, right? Which is basically unplayable for black. Like completely unplayable.
Yeah, completely
Yeah.
unplayable, 100%. As the depth will go up, the evaluation might go down. How do you feel if we reach depth 50, depth 55, and the evaluation is like 0.55? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think at that point it shows that white at least has like a half a pawn advantage, which is not a good look, going that deep into the game. I think what's surprising for me is that through all of the openings we've looked at, some of the dubious ideas we've considered are actually considered to be playable in the point three range. And the fact that the Alekhine this early is like not even that is kind of showing like, yeah, it's very unprincipled. It can't like work.
So we reached step 50. What do you think, Luis?
Yeah. I think the eval from like move from depth 40 has like from depth 45 has lowered a bit, but it's still a very good evaluation for white. Like I think that it kind of shows that if you are playing e4 and you face the Alekhine, this has to be your choice, right? Like this is the most principled, the four pawns attack is the most principled, and it's also considered to be the best by quite a large margin. So I think you have to play this.
Luis and I agreed that at depth 50, if your opening is more than 0.45, it is absolutely unplayable. Imagine this, at depth 50 and 1 trillion positions ran, this opening has been ran through by the engine. And if it can't find better than a huge edge for white, I think it's over. Death to the Alekhines in this video. Next, we'll look at another minor opening against 1e4, the infamous Scandinavian defense, in which black pulls out their queen early in order to give out a center pawn and take white's center pawn, but then attack the center in the future with low space. Is this opening dead? It certainly is at top level. We'll find out today.
I have to say the position looks miserable though for black.
In queen a5 or queen
In queen d6. Look at the line. White just gets like pawn on d4 and c4.
c4, ooh.
Oh, so maybe that's why black normally goes for a6 or c6, It's to prevent this knight b5 idea, maybe.
Queen a5 is near 0.5. This is insane. As we have seen at depth 50 and 1.8 trillion positions ran, the Scandinavian gives a big edge to the white pieces. I cannot defend this opening anymore. It is officially cooked. Solely a blitz opening, a minor try. You might see it in OTB, but it is not a serious opening and not for top level chess. And next is perhaps the most annoying openings to face against 1e4 is the modern and the Pirc, in which black gives out the center, but then attacks the center later on in the middle game, and white always seems to have trouble against these setups. What is the most ridiculous fourth move that you think you can get away with in a classical game against a 2200 FM from this position?
Most ridiculous fourth move. None of the moves look ridiculous if you look at the recommendations, right? Like, yeah, I think all of these are like they'll seem sort of playable. If I was to choose a sideline, which I know is okay, but has some tricks, I would definitely choose bishop g5, Bishop g5 is like just a tricky line where after bishop g7, white plays e5. And it gets into some complications. Like black shouldn't take the pawn. Black should go knight d7 back. Yeah.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Holy schmoly.
Here, yeah, I suspect that bishop e3 is going to be the main move. Because first off, a lot of authors recommend bishop e3, followed by queen d2 and long castles. Very simple setup. And the point is that white is staying flexible with the f pawn, because if you commit the pawn to f3 early, it means that you can't develop the knight to f3. And normally, you want the knight on f3 in some positions where black is preparing to play e5, for example. And with the move knight f3, you can also prepare e5 at a certain moment. So there is benefit to not putting the pawn on f3. So yeah, I think bishop.
And so then how did we respond to an assault like knight g4 if we have a bishop on e3? That can be annoying.
Yeah, it seems like it's annoying. Like in some like knight or for like Sicilian positions, even in the classical Sicilian, like knight g4 is a common move to hit the bishop on e3, right? But then after bishop g5, it turns out that the pin on the e7 pawn is actually a bit annoying. And if they play h6, kicking our bishop away, and then they play g5, that's extremely weakening. And white can easily play a move like h4, right?
But at depth 40, I'm very happy with a 0.58 for the white pieces. Okay, I would love it to be in the point sixes, but this is entirely fine. And might I say, it's distinctive from the second best recommendation, Knight of Three.
Yeah, yeah, it's very like a high evaluation at this point. Bishop f4 is not a common move at all because it just seems like the bishop on f4 hits, the d6 pawn. Um, and if the question is if white wants to develop the bishop to e3, f4 or g5, um, where does it belong? If white's idea is still queen d2 and long castles. So I think that and bishop f4 is a bit surprising that it's considered even better than like bishop g5, but nothing is like, extremely shocking here so far.
We have a final development here. We have reached step 50, but we have like almost a four-way tie between the first four moves. What do you think about this closing out?
The setups are fundamentally different, right? Um, whether white plays bishop f4 or knight f3 immediately, pawn to f3, right? So it's
Yeah, I mean, you just flexibility at one point. Oh my God, Bishop F4 is taking the lead.
wow.
So from the recommendations so far, what do you like?
Yeah, I think that the main move is going to be bishop e3, just because
Again,
it's the most
wow.
flexible move, and because black can always transpose into Pirc, right, with the move knight f6. So white always needs to consider that if they play a move, it might transpose into a good version of the Pirc for black. For example, if white plays knight f3 now, then it might just allow black to play knight f6, and we enter the classical Pirc fence, which is not the most challenging like line against the Pirc for sure, right? So.
And why would someone rather choose the modern setup and delay this knight f6 Pirc rather than the Pirc setup?
I think that first off, it avoids some like dangerous ideas of the Austrian attack with white playing f4. Yeah, and there's always the threat of e5 because then f6 is a bit vulnerable, right? And also when black plays this sort of move order, they have ideas potentially of not even playing knight f6, but instead playing more like a6 followed by quick
Mhm.
b5. And
Mhm.
yeah, those sort of like modern ideas are quite typical actually nowadays, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we've come up with 7 lines here. What are your final thoughts, Luis, on the recommendation of Bishop E3, Knight F6, and Queen D2? Just quick
Yeah, I
battery
just like
castle.
transpose this into like the Pirc, right? But the line is suggesting for black is to go for c6 and to go for d5 next. Wait, yeah, then that enters sort of like a Gurgenitsa system. That's gonna be interesting.
Not only did we find the Pirc and the Modern absolutely playable for black, it near equalizes, gives a small edge, but that's a given with all the space that black gives from an early move order. Good news for white though, many setups are possible to confuse your opponent from the get-go, and you don't have to play the absolute best setup, you just need a great setup, and you need to stick to your plans and preserve your space. Next, we'll look at 2 underrated gambits against 1d4. You don't often hear about underrated and gambits and against 1d4 in the same sentence. So what are these? We are of course talking about the Benko gambit and the lesser known Blumenfeld gambit. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be looking at the Benko Gambit, a very famous gambit invented by Paul Benko, the American-Hungarian grandmaster who recently passed away in 2020. What are your expectations for this Benko Gambit?
I think that here the two main moves are gonna be just taking the pawn with b takes a6, and I think the best move is gonna be the move e3, which in my database is not the most common move, it's only the third most common move. But the
Hmm.
move e3 is very, very nice actually, because it simply prepares to not even waste a tempo on taking the pawn, but as soon as black takes the pawn to b5, white is ready to develop the bishop. So I think that is quite a nice idea. Oh, it's something interesting in this in the recommendation. I think this is shocking. After
What?
e3, which is the main move that it's recommending, it suggests black to go e6, and that's a direct transposition into the Blumenfeld gambit. Yeah, that's shocking,
That's
right?
sick.
Yeah, that's shocking.
That's sick.
And it makes a ton of sense because when me and Zach, when we analyzed the Blumenfeld a bit previously, not with the strongest engine, but when we analyzed it, we realized that whenever white plays e3, in the Blumenfeld Gambit, the way to punish the Blumenfeld Gambit is normally for white to play, if black ever plays e6, puts a pawn in the center, white is able to play knight c3 and play the move e4 really quickly. And that gives white an advantage. As soon as white plays e3, that move is just one tempo slower. So it means that this position is, I think this is like shocking that this is the main recommendation.
Wait, so we might be leaving today with the Blumenfeld Gambit and the Benko Gambit as playable. So depth 48 on 0.41, is that still playable in our book, or it's the limit?
I think it shows that you could play it. It's not 100% refuted. It's just that maybe you'd have to like defend either like some slightly worse endgame, or you just have to find some really, really precise moves to be able to be okay, you know.
Yeah, I jive with this thought, yeah.
But honestly, based on the position that I'm looking at, I really like black's position. I'm not gonna lie. Like, this is one of the only positions whenever it's evaluated like good for white that I actually like black's position. Because if you notice, like after move 13, black gets the pawn on c5, d5, and e6, and maybe at some point they were able to play e5. Maybe, you know. That looks really nice, I think.
0.38 with 1 depth to go. I'm very enthusiastic here.
I'm really hoping it works, because then, you know, it will be an actually like valid weapon that no one will expect.
And we're back. The Blumenfeld Gambit, thought to be a long-lost gambit in the relics of ancient chess. Is it just tricks? Or is it gold?
Man.
Today we'll find out. It's very playable.
Yeah, it's if the main line is to play d takes e6 and that's considered the best move, I think that is playable. Yeah, but no one is playing the move bishop f4, right? No one is playing bishop f4.
But are we just not happy with bishop f4, b4? What's the idea? You want some d6?
It's just like I don't see like there's so many other more natural moves, right? Even bishop g5 to put pressure on the knight seems even more natural rather than bishop f4. It's so weird. Bishop f4, b4, queen c2, d6, e4. White gets a nice center, and then black just starts playing on the queen side, like a5, a4. Weird.
So this is still on the verge. Like practically, this is playable, the DE line, but it's still high warnings. But it demands for white to know so deep, you know, to get the 0.43.
Yeah, and I've never analyzed something like this, you know, like this line.
And you're an opening specialist. That says a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like if d4, you know, people more inclined to play d4, maybe they've looked at this before, but I really doubt it, right? Like, it's just so strange of a.
Do you think you would blow off the board, like an 1800 who, let's be honest, knows nothing from this position after you play b5? Do you think you blow him over the board? He knows nothing. Like he takes 15 minutes here.
It's so easy to play black's position, right? Black has a nice center. Black has a weaker king, but it doesn't really matter because white can't get after it. Like the only benefit of white's, you know, advantage of white's position is the extra pawn. And if it can't be, you know, like if it's not felt immediately, it's just like black gets huge play. I think it's an 1800 like opponent. This would be really, really strong.
After our very deep and very patient research, we were pleasantly surprised to hear that these gambits, although you're giving a pawn, are playable. They're right there on the fence. 0.40 is around our limit at this depth, but we guarantee for you, if you know these lines in and out, this is a playable sideline side opening for you against 1d4 to surprise your opponent.